I've no idea how Lee Shannon managed to do this. Hello and welcome to Tim's BMW Repairs and Information. Well, how far have we got since this happened? This is the main road through Bentley. It used to be the main Alton to Farnham road, but we had a bypass put in. So Lee's just gone past some parked cars, gone back into the left-hand lane. And to your right is the road from Frith End. And panning the camera right to the right now. And yet this car hasn't seen the junction, so he's going at full speed here, probably 30 miles an hour. Yeah, there's the lines on the road to denote that it is a junction, but he hasn't seen it. Lee's right on the far left-hand side of the road as far as he can go now, and the point of impact there, and I'll zoom the camera back out again to show you the place on the road that the E31's in, so we're almost right across the other side of the junction now. Well, we've made some progress, and I'll be showing you what I've done so far as repairing the car mechanically, but we've got nowhere with Darwin Insurance Company. Now, they've been especially slow to respond, and I can just imagine if this was an owner of a car that it's his only car and he uses it to go to work, then he's just going to have to crumble, I would have thought. So the insurance company said right at the start, well, after a month actually it took them to get that far, they said, well, the car's worth £20,000. It's £18,200 worth of repairs, so we're going to write the car off. It's a total loss. I'd always said to them, look, I'm going to keep hold of the car no matter what happens. So they said, well, if you want to keep hold of the car, it's going to cost you £5,866. So they give me 20 grand. I pay £5,866 to get the car back. I haven't got enough money for the repairs. Yeah, okay, so the most expensive repair, I've sort of escalated the claim a couple of times now. I'm expecting an answer by the 28th of August, and it's only the 12th today. So it's been months, hasn't it, since the accident happened? Anyway, okay, so bodywork, there's no getting away from it. The B pillar's damaged. Fortunately, you can get the B pillar, well, the whole back section of the car from BMW still, and for not much money, very small amount of money. Not sure what they're going to do with the door. That's going to have to be replaced, I would have thought. Problem is you can't open it. Yeah. Pull the handle as much as you like and thump on the door. It's not going anywhere. Can pull both door handles, unlock it at the same time. Not the slightest bit interested. So you would need to get the door card off, but yeah, door cards aren't that keen to come off when the door's still closed. Yeah, I'm not quite sure how that is going to come off, to be honest. I think what the body shop's going to have to do is just sort of lever the door open from the outside, knowing that, well, they've got to replace all of this anyway, so that's probably how they'll do it. Okay, so mechanical repairs are the sticking point. It's a lot of money to replace all the bits that have got damaged. Now, you would have thought, well, as you know, the rear wheel's sticking out like that. As the car hit from the side, Lee was still going forward at quite a slow speed, but it pushed that wheel outwards and back. And what's actually happened, it's the suspension parts on the back of the wheel that is damaged, and I can show you the damage. There you go. That does look like it's made out of the crust of a steak and kidney pie, I must admit, but it still was structurally sound, and it's just got a big sort of zigzag in it now, and that is the carrier for the rear axle. So everything's bolted to it. But rightio, it's £3,000 from BMW, by the way, so it's not a cheap part. But I got one. You join me here on a beautiful English summer's day, which means it's pouring down with rain and about a storm force 4 as well. Yeah, now and again I get cold water chucked down my back and all over this, which is a rear axle carrier for my BMW 840ci. What am I doing in my garden with it? Well, of course, being English, I've painted it with black hammerite, as we always do with anything that's slightly rusty, out with the black hammerite and we'll paint it. So yeah, got one of those. Rightio. Second problem is that, of course, the carrier's damaged, sure, but probably the suspension arms are damaged as well. So we're getting into territory which I normally remove myself from for a good distance, because it's all under the car. It's big nuts and bolts, it's eccentric bolts, it's bushes that need presses to get them in, ball joints that don't come apart unless you've got a ball joint splitter, and stuff like that. Okay, let's go on a bit further. For instance, the upper wishbones on the rear axle, they're extortionately expensive from BMW. But what you can do is get new bushes put in them. So as long as they're not bent, not a problem at all. You can send them off. Well, it used to be to Wolf in Germany. He would, and I've done that on this car. This has got upper wishbones, that has got his logo on and all the rest of it. Found a place in England that does it now, 320 quid. Yeah, so that's not too bad. They'll put a new bush in it, do the same as Wolf did, which is to powder coat it and make it look all lovely and shiny again. That's fine. Right, I'm going to have to interrupt myself here, I'm afraid. I've got a much better plan. Instead of spending 320 quid sending this off to be refurbished, I'm going to refurbish this myself. Have I got the press tools? No, I don't need any of those. The important thing is the spherical bearings have to be okay. And to check them in this orientation, see if they move left to right. Now they're a shaft with a ball on in the middle in a cup, and that allows it to sway around like that. As long as it doesn't move left to right, there isn't any play in it. And the reason these are so grotty is because the boots have fallen off, well, torn up in fact, and dirt's got in them, and then the grease has dried up. So they feel awful, but we can fix that. Same for this, there's no left-right movement on that. Spherical bearing is in perfect condition, it's just dried up. I'm going to show you a way to refurbish these spherical bearings so they're as good as new. And the grease will be in them and the boots will be on them. You'll just have to wait a bit longer in the episode, I'm afraid, to find out. But this is going to save me a whole lot of money and a whole lot of time. Fantastic. Okay. Problem is, of course, the upper wishbones are on the car, so I can't send them off to get them redone and so on without knowing when the car's going to be repaired. But I had a cunning plan, I really did. Well, it was a bit of an accident, to be honest. I was looking through eBay, just seeing where I can buy the arms, suspension arms and stuff like that, and I came across this. Yep, a complete rear axle assembly from an E31. So not only do I get the new sort of upper wishbones, but get all the arms, and they're not bent. So we're off to a great start. We've now got lots of arms and the upper wishbones, and we got the axle carrier as well, which I don't need because I've got one already, which I actually got home. Okie dokie, so now we've got a complete rear axle in my garden, which does look lovely. I must admit, next to the plant pots, yeah, it's an excellent addition to the garden. One rear axle complete with everything. So my rear axle has got everything. It's got the carrier, it's got the upper and lower wishbones, it's got all the little dog bones, it's got the long arms, and it's got the little short arms as well. I'll show you that in a minute. So we've got the hubs, and it's actually got the drive shafts as well. It did come with the differential, but I said, no, take it off. I've already got one in the garage, and I don't need another one. I need the one from here, which is the 3.15. So that's where we've got to now. Yeah, taking them apart, taking a rear axle apart when it's off the car is hard work. Now, I've read quite a few write-ups about redoing the rear suspension, and I've seen so many pictures on bimmerforums.com where people have got lifts and they unbolt it all and they bring it down and they spend a couple of years doing it up. They paint it nice and black and they put it back up again and show the pictures on bimmerforums.com. Look what I've done. Yeah, it's taken you 2 years, mate. Not leaving my car in my drive for 2 years. So I've got to do things a lot quicker. So yeah, anyway, the Bimmer Forums gave good advice, which was to undo all the bolts, all the nuts, before you take it off the car. And yeah, and I found out why, because you try and undo a nut and the whole thing just moves around. Yeah, it's much easier when you got over 2 tons of car still attached to it, yeah. But it's not impossible, and I've done one side. And now I've got to the point where it's all ball joints left, and I haven't got a ball joint splitter because Lee Shannon does all that sort of work. He always has done. Now on my car, this was hit in this direction. That pushed that back, which is a spring carrier, and that then collapsed this part of the rear axle carrier. So it's as simple as that. It's quite a lot of force you would have thought to do that. I know mine looks a bit rusty, but it was still structurally sound. Okay, so I mean, the rear suspension is a whole bunch of arms and ball joints and stuff like that, but it boils down to essentially 3 parts, which is the spring carrier, the upper wishbone, and that huge arm that then bolts to the car underneath the chassis. So there we go, there's the big bolts that go in there. And these two here, the upper wishbone and the spring carrier, are held onto the axle carrier by an eccentric bolt. And here's one I've took off earlier. Now I'll tell you all about eccentric bolts. They're used to set the camber and the alignment, well, but the basic alignment of the rear wheels. Now an interesting thing about the eccentric bolts is you can't get them from BMW anymore, and I know some people manufacture them. But these are the original ones that come off, and I managed to get 3 off, and the 4th one I broke, and I'll tell you why, and that's because never turn the bolt, always turn the nut. So what you need to do if you want to take these off is to put a socket on the head of the bolt, but don't turn it, another socket on the nut, and just stop that bolt from turning. And that's no problem, the nut will come off, and the washer will come off, and then you'll be able to get the whole thing out. Okay, so a close look up of the eccentric bolt tells you why you must only turn the nut and not the head of the bolt. Because it's got this slot in it here, and the eccentric washer at the other end has got a tang that slides in that. Now that allows the whole assembly to turn like that and to be eccentric, so it will then move the upper wishbone and the spring carrier by small amounts. But of course when it's tight, that washer isn't going to want to turn, and if you turn the head of the bolt, one of 2 things will happen. Either the tang will come off the washer, which is what happened to me, or it will cut into the bolt and ruin the thread, either of which is the reason you can't reuse them. But no, these are fine. So let's find out how this all works then. So we've got one eccentric bolt here for the upper wishbone, and one over there for the spring carrier. Now by turning those, you've got these 3 parts. That is stationary, that's a huge great big arm, and that there, that is a captive bolt, so that doesn't come off. Well, it's probably well, it's a captive bolt, isn't it, to some extent? So it's got a head on it rather than a stud. So that stays still, and that's on the upper part of the hub. And we can now move these left and right using the eccentric bolts. So what we can do, if we move them both left and right, of course what the hub's going to do, it's going to cant over like that. Now if we just do one, say the upper wishbone, then it's going to move like that. That'll move the hub the same direction, and vice versa. If we just do that one, it's going to move it all in that direction, and the hub will do the same. So that's quite interesting on the on why you have eccentric bolts, because you have to align the system afterwards. I will interrupt myself there. As I was saying, we usually send these off to WOC in Germany, or as I said, I found someone in the UK, but the spherical bearings themselves are fine. They don't have any up-down play on them. They're all loose, but that's because it's got no grease in it. And it's got no grease in it because the boot has failed on it. Okay, well, that's a boot. And what we're going to do is we're going to remove both the remains of the boot. So I've already done the other side. There we go, boot's gone from there. And we'll do the same from this side. And they're held on with the little springs. So there's an outer spring, and that's the inner spring, and that's what holds these things in place. And it's just a case of getting your screwdriver under them, choosing the right spot to start, and then they'll come out. He said confidently. This will be my fourth one now, so they do come out. There we go. That's got the end of it. There we go, just a little round springy thing. And then we do the same to the outer part. Sometimes the inner one causes a trouble and sometimes the outer one does, but yeah, there we go. There's the spring. Right, with those two springs off, you can now get the remains of the ball joint cover off, or a spherical cover in this case. It's a matter of finding an end of it and then it'll come out. Now of course if you've got any end-to-end slop on the spherical bearing, then it's the goner and you'll have to send it off. There we go, he's almost out. Righty-ho, so that's the inner and the outer one out. Just make sure there's nothing left of it in there. There we go. Nothing left on the outside. Okay, so the plan will be next, we'll clean that out with brake cleaner, which hasn't turned up yet. Just make sure there's none of the boot left around. There's sort of bits and bobs in this one. I'll get it out with brake cleaner though. Anyway, yeah, we'll clean that all up with brake cleaner. Get all the old grease out there because the grease has gone off. It's just gone too firm. And yeah, clean it out and then we'll repack it with grease. And there we go, CV joint grease. That's the perfect stuff for that. So we'll have nicely greased up spherical bearing. And then we'll use one of these devices from a universal kit. This one is 20, 30 by 15. I think that's the right one. I think that's the right one I checked earlier on. And he'll go over there and go, there's a groove in that that'll sit into. And that pushes it down and actually seals it against the other part of what used to be the boot cover. I'll remove it and show you. So see what we're looking at here. Can we see it all? Not really, but there we go. Anyway, there's a sort of a landing place for the boot in there and a groove there, you can see it, for the middle part of the seal. So there we go. Grease it all up. Fill this with grease as well. Stick it over there. Squash it into place. It'll go into the slot, the undercut in the centre part, and there we got a brand new, what looks like a brand new spherical bearing, whereas in fact of course it's the same one, but it all be nicely greased up. Okay, so that saves me 320 quid a side. The universal kit comes with all sorts of shapes and sizes of boots. I think there's only a couple of them that's going to fit. I think that was one of them. This might be the other one. Yeah, that doesn't look too bad actually, as long as it doesn't stick out too far. If it sticks out too far, it will get clouted by the axle carrier. That one's gone in nicely. Yeah, that's fine. So yeah, there's 2 of them per universal kit. Fill that up with grease, job's a good un. 320 quid aside saved, because the spherical bearings are fine. They just need to be cleaned and then re-greased. And we're going to do exactly the same with the spring carriers. I've got one here that I removed earlier. And look, it's almost exactly the same bearing. Slightly bigger hole in it, slightly bigger there. Anyway, once that's all done, is this size going to fit? I think it probably will. There we go. Yeah, that goes into the slot. Yeah, about that size again. Yeah, look at that. Right, I'll do that before that goes back up to Lee Shannon. I might even paint it with black hammerite just for a treat. Excellent. Well, that's going to keep the dirt out of them. That's for sure. Yeah, a bit more work on there, and that's a good one. On the hub, we've got 2 big spherical bearings as well. So these go round and round as well. That one there, that one's a bit tight. Now that one is what I'd class as an excellent bush, but again, the rubber has come a cropper. So that is in good condition. There's no movement at all on that. Whereas the low one, yeah, it just flops about, I'm afraid, and I'm not sure if you can hear that. It goes bonk bonk as you move it up and down. So yeah, there on the hub, you usually end up with a couple of these that have to be pulled out and new ones pushed in. I think that can be done by someone like Lee Shannon. I will ask him, but no, these are just sort of run-of-the-mill repairs on the suspension. That would lead to a bit of play in the rear axle, probably not enough so you'd notice, to be honest. Okay, what other sort of ball joints? We've got hundreds of ball joints, to be honest. They're all over the place. That's one of them there. That connects to the hub. That's in good condition, I'm glad to say, but I can't get it off the hub, and I'll be using my own hubs on the repair. Yeah, they're all over the place. There's a ball joint there in the middle of that huge carrier, and there's a joint at the end of it as well, which on this looks pretty manky, but is actually in good condition. There's no play in that at all. These things do look rotten quite quickly, I'm afraid. So another bush there, and that looks like a brand new one. That ball joint is fantastic, no play in it at all. On the axle carrier itself, you have 4 enormous bushes, which are these. These look to me like these have just been changed. I'm not sure, but they look in great condition. There's 4 of them, one there, 2 over the other side. And then you've got 2, which I'm absolutely convinced are brand new, never been used, bushes for the differential. So I'm not quite sure what happened to this car. Something was being done to it, and then it was scrapped, because they're brand new, there's absolutely no doubt about it. So those are the 2 bushes that hold the back of the differential, and you've got one at the front here as well. So that's where the differential hangs on. And this bit here at the top is the bit that always goes rusty. Not quite sure what it's there for, and why it wasn't a solid part, but there you go. Yeah, that always goes rusty, and it looks awful on my car. Righty-ho, well, that is really, apart from a few ball joints and curly rods and all sorts, the essentials of the rear suspension. I must admit, I did have a bit of wobble at one point and thought, well, wouldn't it be a lot simpler if I just got another second-hand car? And I saw a lovely one on eBay, which then was a link to Bonham's car auctions. I thought, yeah, that one, it looks absolutely perfect. Why don't I just get that one? And then I haven't got all the hassle of messing about with this car. Well, 2 reasons. First of all, I love this car and I'm going to keep it. Secondly, what do you do with an old car if it's scrap? It's just going to have vultures come along and just rob parts out of it, and it'll be much less than its sum parts. You can imagine what's going to go. The sports seats, the interior, it's all going to go. Engine and gearbox, that's going to disappear. and all sorts of things like that, and you're just going to leave a car just a rusting hulk, which I don't want to do. So yeah, anyway, yep, I had a bit of a wobble. I did have a look at that car, and the first pictures make it look absolutely perfect. Yeah, it looks absolutely brilliant. No problems at all, no rust, no nothing. Low mileage, yeah. And I was tempted, but then I had a closer look at all the pictures, and I noticed that the front covers on the air intakes, they're missing. So, well, not the air intakes, it's the brake air inlets. They're meant to have little round covers on them on a CSI type front. They were missing. I thought, that's a bit strange, isn't it? They're not there. Well, yeah, that's a bit of a pain. They're no longer available, so I possibly could have used the ones off this car, but nah. And then you have a close look at all the metalwork. Yeah, that's gone rusty. Yep, no close-up shot of the sunroof, apart from with it open. And yeah, things were looking rusty. So, you know, that's going to be 3 or 4 grand to do that. Probably get the car for about 15 grand. I think it went for somewhere around there. Yeah, and you're back up to 20 grand and all the rest of it. And you don't know anything about the car. Then, of course, you've got to change the steering wheel because it's the wrong one. You've got to swap the Steptronic around the right way. You've got to put the ambient lighting in. You've got to have the stainless steel exhaust systems. You've got a 3.15 to 1 ratio rear axle. You've got to get the Rondel 58s. You've got to have them refurbished. You've got to have new tyres put on, and so on and so on. You're getting up to 30 grand in the end, and it's just not worth it. Much prefer to fix this car, and then it's not wasted. Yeah, and the more I looked at that car, the more things I noticed, because as I sit in my car, it's not perfect. It's got quite a few things sort of going wrong with it. That always happens to E31s. My headlining isn't sagging, but it is starting to droop above the visors. And I noticed on that lovely car with 80,000 miles, whatever it was doing exactly the same. I don't use the sunroof because it has the same sort of problem, which is when it's open and closed, the sort of lining goes a bit flappy and you have to poke it up. That's got the same problem. So it's got exactly the same problems as this car. Oh, and the seats look exactly the same as well. You know, got the veins in them. There's no tears or anything. It's been well looked after. But it looks the same age as this one. So yeah, I got to the point I thought, no, that's not a perfect car. You know, it's got all these problems with it. Half of them the same as I've got in this car, but it's just not worth it. It's the wrong colour to start with. It was a nice Aegean blue, I think, but it isn't more metallic. And yeah, it showed because, of course, you can see all the rust. Good thing about more metallic is you can't see the rust. Unless it becomes severe and things start dropping off. More metallic, it hides it really well. So yeah, it was the wrong colour. It had the same problems as this one, well, apart from being crashed. And yeah, it wasn't worth it in the end. So yeah, I had a wobble, and then I got better and realised that, yeah, it's just not worth it. Anyway, I'm so used to this car and its little foibles, and I'm used to the power and how it drives and everything. So it might be slightly different after it's all been repaired, but I hope so, because the rear end was getting a bit sloppy anyway. So by the time we've got the carrier on, all new bushes everywhere, and it all lovely, yeah, it's going to be a lot tighter. So I'll be a lot happy with it. So some of the work had to be done anyway, which is the bushes, brake lines, fuel lines had to be done, and they're so easy when the rear axle carrier's off, because you undo the axle, get the carrier off, along with the hubs and the drive shafts and the differential and all the rest of it. There's the brake lines, there's the fuel lines, easy to get to, swap them over, as simple as that, job done. So Lee said, yeah, well, yeah, we'll do all of that at the same time, might as well. Once the axle carrier's off, yeah, easy job, no problem at all. Damn fiddly with the axle carrier on, but yeah, with it off, no problem at all. Could I do this work myself, the mechanical work myself? No. One, I don't want to. Two, I'm 65. And thirdly, I'd much rather have Lee do it. I don't have a lift. And I know people could have done it by jack stands and put it up quite a height by jack stands. I never go under a car when it's got jack stands on it. I just don't trust the blimmin' things. So, apart from that, of course, there are huge nuts and bolts that you need quite an effort to get off. So, no, I wouldn't do it myself, even if, you know, it's sort of, I had the lift. I don't think I'd do it myself anyway. Lee's used to doing this, and he'll have that rear axle carrier off of this one and the new one on very quickly, well, after he's done the fuel and brake lines and so on. So the job will be a good one. So let's have a quick look around what is broken on my car. Well, first of all, as we've already said, axle carrier's got a Z bend in it. Yeah, that's probably not good for it. Yeah, I was thinking, well, I could get under the car and straighten that out just so that the car drives. But then I thought, nah, bend that back again. It's probably going to snap and it's just going to make things even worse. So, yeah, so the axle carrier's got that Z bend in it. Not sure about the arms. Now, Lee was pretty convinced that one of the arms was bent. Difficult to say. They're a bit bent to start with, let's face it. As I noticed on the one here, it's, you know, they're not straight arms. You know, got nice bends in them here and there. They're big and chunky, though, I'll give you that. Well, they need to be, really. They hold the wheels on. Yeah, the axle carrier holds everything apart from the front arms, which are then bolted up into the chassis. No body damage underneath of it. Lee checked it and it was fine. I will have the body shop put it on their jig and just make sure things are aligned still, but I don't think there's a problem. It wasn't that fast to crash. It wasn't as though the car was doing 70 miles an hour. It was just an unfortunate angle, to be honest. Hit that side of the car and this car kept moving. Yeah, and so just damaged the axle carrier. Okay then, there we go. Yep, yeah, I've got to get back out of the car again. Yeah, not sure my body's going to be quite the same. I've no idea how Lee Shannon managed to do this every day, because it's hard work getting across the centre console, it really is. Oh, rain started, so I'm going to have to close the windows. Anyway, yeah, thanks for watching. Oh, thanks very much for all the comments. Fantastic going through the comments, some great advice. Yeah, some people are very blunt. That's great with me, that's fine. Yeah, I'll take it on the nose. Yeah, saying, you know, it's just an old car and blah, blah, blah. Yeah, that is some people's opinion. 90% opinion is I've got to save the car, so that's what I'm doing. So, there we go. Right, so thanks very much for watching. Thanks for all the comments. I think I've got through them all now. I think there's 175, so I managed to do them all. Yeah, rain's coming down quite hard, so I need to get my camera in. Rightio, I'll see you next time.